if we're talking basketball, we got to go to Phoenix, don't we? There was
Nothing says Christmas like Phoenix.
This is a pretty great gift. $4 billion estimated. It's still being finalized, but Mat Ishbia is buying the team. But it's interesting. Phoenix Suns and Mercury, because remember both of them were owned by Sarver. And I just kind of was curious to hear your thoughts on this whole process. The investment bank that Phoenix retained said it could be 6 to 9 months for it to be completely finalized. That statement came out early this fall, maybe it's August, September. And here we are approaching this holiday weekend, and it's done. What did you think about the speed here?
It went really quickly, but I know that there are a lot of people. It's kind of a seller's market right now. If you want to sell your NBA team, there are a lot of investment groups, a lot of people with this kind of money, like Mat Ishbia, who's like they've been looking at teams. I know he's looked at some NFL teams. Like he's had his money lined up. His I don't know. I kind of compare it to like hunting for a house or a condo, where like you go get pre-approved, you get your ducks in a row, and then you go find what you're looking for. I think I got a feeling there was a lot of that. A lot of very rich guys ready to step in immediately and take over a situation. So I think this is a good one for the league. Corey, there's still some house cleaning that needs to go on in that front office. A lot of guys who were part of the problem there still seem to be there. But I think just getting a fresh face as an owner and being able to hopefully improve that situation and the work situation there, it would be a huge step forward just for the league and the culture.
Yeah, this was I thought it was an interesting from like the side of just like what's following. If you're looking at like the Premier League and the rush for Americans to buy sports teams internationally, and then also vice versa. I know you're a Newcastle fan. The Middle East, how everyone's trying. Like it seems like there's like this huge rush to get into sports as an interesting investment, because I think this team, if I'm not mistaken, bought what was bought in 20 years ago for like
2004 for $400 million, which was the record.
Exactly. Let that sink in, right? And then 20 years later, $4 billion. So that kind of jump, it kind of screams like, oh, that's an investment. I think it's a little more complicated than that, like most things, right? Because like it's a pretty capital intensive business, and like, how often are you making money year over year? Like, so it's like there's a lot of questions there, and it's like a luxury asset. But I think in the state of, this is kind of boring, but like in the state of like what's going on, this is fascinating that an NBA team could be equivalent to like, let's say Chelsea, like a Premier League team that has like one of the biggest fan bases globally. That then puts the NBA on par with, because like in the NFL, it dominates the US, right? But Premier League dominates the world. Chelsea, Manchester, United, these are teams that have billions of fans, like billions of fans around the world. For the Phoenix Suns to kind of get within, throwing distance as far as a rock is concerned, like throwing distance, spitting distance of a Premier League team, and especially it's not like the Knicks, it's not like the Lakers, it's the Phoenix Suns. That should be a massive signal to the rest of the NBA. Like we are a global business that's on par with, some of the best fan bases in the world.
I think we'll get into this a little more later, but I think you also hit the nail on the head. That's where the growth is for the NBA. The NFL, I think, actually is doing better in Europe, but it's not the same. This is, I think, soccer is football is the better equivalent, because like when Barcelona plays Real Madrid, like the streaming and television numbers crush the Super Bowl. They're like double, triple the Super Bowl. It's ridiculous because it's international. It's not just Spain watching it, right? Or Europe. It's the Far East, and it's China, and it's the Philippines, and it's other Africa and South America, and this whole world watches this match. Yep. The NBA has that kind of potential because this is the best basketball league in the world. And as much as the Euro League is good, and there's other good leagues out there, the best players from Europe are here. Luka is here, and this is that's where the growth is for the league. And we'll get into that a little more later, but ultimately I think you're right. I think that's where the investment people are looking at it going, I'm buying a house near the beach, man. The value's not going down, right? Yeah, I'm buying a prime property.
And it's crazy to think that this might be like towards, and obviously it's not a low. It's not like you're buying at 400 million, right? But I mean, but I think that this could be, close to the like a lower, because like if the ceiling is what they think it could be, it's pretty interesting. Like you mentioned soccer and how many people watch, a match like El Clasico. We just finished the World Cup. Official data from 2018, Kurt, guess how many people watched the World Cup in Russia in 2018?
Billions.
It's a big number.
Yeah, billions would be my guess. Yeah, I don't know.
Yes. Over 3.5 billion people. So like, to think like half the world watched the World Cup final. Like, we talk about Super Bowl being a big number, 100+ million people, but like half the world tuning in to a tournament. Like that kind of level is, and once again, we kind of zoom in. Obviously, the Premier League or Chelsea is not, equivalent to the World Cup, clearly, but to kind of tap into like, well, what could growth look like for basketball around the world? It's a really interesting kind of question as far as like a Harvard business, case. Like that's kind of the way I look at this. I'm like, this is fascinating. 2019, the Nets sold for a record 2.35 billion, and then 3 years later, mind you, post-pandemic, we're talking 4 billion.
Yeah, and by the way, I think on the court, if you're a Suns fan, you live in Phoenix, this could be good as well. Sarver was not the biggest spender of owners, right? Like not a guy who was out there. I don't know that the new ownership group is throwing money around like they're a Ballmer, but I mean, they've got that kind of money, but a little better spending, a little more professional, I think could be good for their reputation. That is a place, by the way, where agents like to go. I mean, Chris Paul chose it. You're not far from the West Coast. You're in a warm city. State taxes are good. And if you've got a family, like there's a lot of guys who like that market. So new ownership
and you can train good for them. Because like that's the one place where like you think about where people train year round. Athletes generally, not just basketball players, but a lot of football guys train in Phoenix or like in Arizona, or they train in LA, they train in Miami or Florida generally. So like you kind of look at the hubs of, okay, you got access to great training facilities year round. You have golf year round, and we know how much NBA guys love to golf. So you can golf all the time. I also just want to mention, because it's a very fascinating note. It's the Phoenix Suns and Mercury. And I think this is great for the WNBA because, a rising tide floats all ships. And the fact that you have a record sale and it's both the NBA team and the WNBA team in the midst of Brittany Griner returning and announcing she does want to play again. I think this is like a fascinating moment for the WNBA just to get a lot of eyeballs on it and some very positive kind of ideas. Okay, well, what is the valuation of a WNBA team? What is the valuation, of women's sports at the current moment? And I think this could actually be a great boon for the WNBA as well.
I think that is, by the way, a fascinating conversation, possibly lengthy one for another day. But there's push and pull within WNBA ownership because you have, you'll have the new ownership group in Phoenix. Joe Tsai owns Liberty in New York, and you've got a young group of owners willing to spend and an older group of owners who don't necessarily have that kind of money and want to grow more slowly. And it's been a push and pull for a while, and it seems to be leaning one way, which is good for the WNBA. It's good for its players. And I think it could be good for the Mercury. I think, by the way, the other thing out of this, we kind of didn't – Mat Ishbia won a NCAA national championship as a golf player.
How do we miss that? We very
over that part. Like, and outside of the Michigan State ties and Tom Izzo and all that fun, you were at Notre Dame as a scholarship player. If you walk on as a basketball player at Michigan State or a football player at Notre Dame or somewhere at Alabama, you're competitive. You are a fighter. You do not get, go watch Rudy. They do a whole scene about it. You don't walk on to these kind of places, right, and be a casual observer. Like you've got to earn that kind of spot. And having that kind of competitive fire as an owner and a basketball background, I think will be good, right?
I also think if you're going to talk about the walk-on mentality, the walk-on, I mean, to be that selfless, because remember, this is a hard job, and you're talking like, and for the most part, you're going to have to pay as well. So it's kind of like you have to pay to participate, and you're doing just as much work as everyone else, and you don't get the glory of actually playing for the most part. So I think that mentality actually could serve pretty well in the ownership space, because we talk about owners who are over-involved, too hands-on versus like trusting the process and trusting the basketball people to do the basketball thing. So to be a fan of the game, but also understand your role as an owner, I think is another interesting conversation that I think a walk-on might be uniquely, situated to understand more than most people.